Hello, everyone, and I welcome you here at yet another live interview with one of our new participants of the Blockchain Leadership Summit that will take place on 23rd, 24th November in Basel. This time I'm speaking with Chris van Oosten, the head of the digital platforms and at the port of Rotterdam. Hello, Chris.
Hi, good afternoon.
Well, yeah, we are basically trying to cover all the time zones, so for some it might be even a good night, but anyway.
It's afternoon here.
Oh, I see. Well, let me just ask you some questions about what apparently a traditional business and an industrial giant such as the Port of Rotterdam is actually looking for at our summit, and what does it all have to do with the blockchain? Just a couple of years ago, all we could imagine was some hype with tokens and coins. That was basically it. Now we see quite a bunch of industrial leaders and corporations paying attention to the new technology. So what is it up to?
Oh, yeah, that's actually a very good question, because as a port, we have 85 years experience now in maintaining ports, maintaining water, making sure that the water is deep enough for the big vessels, stuff like that. But since a couple of years, we see as a port that that role is changing. So we have two major focus points. One is energy transition, and the other one is digitalization. And the digitalization, that's basically where this comes in. And what we do is we give a lot of effort on how we can facilitate logistics even better. So we do facilitate it as a port, that the logistics go through the port, and that's the same thing that we want to do. And what we see, obviously in logistics, that there's a lot of parties working together. There's a lot of parties that have to share data, but usually it's very hard to do so. And their blockchain offers a lot of opportunities. So there's trust in the blockchain. There is different parties that can share data in a way that it's still their data. So that's exactly what we use blockchain for. Experimenting, of course, it's all in a very young stage. Even this morning I was at an event and it really stated blockchain is only 2 years old, and I agreed to that. So it's still all, experimenting and doing as good as we can, but it offers amazing opportunities for us to help parties in the port and after the port in our hinterland, and even all the way to Switzerland, which is an important market for us.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Well, speaking about data processing and data sharing, what is the major difference between using a distributed ledger for your business processes as compared to the traditional solutions?
Well, the major thing is that there's a couple of things in logistics. One of the things is if a container travels, for example, from China to Switzerland, there's about 28 parties involved in that process. And all those parties, you don't want, one general organization who takes control of all that data. So that's why you can very well use a distributed ledger for. So that's one. There's also, in logistics, very famous, which is called double spend. So the ownership of the cargo is put in a bill of lading. And that bill of lading, you don't want it doubled during the process, which sometimes can happen. So that's why you can use the distributed ledger to make sure that double spend doesn't occur. So those are just two examples, but it offers more opportunity.
So if we put it simple, basically what it gives, and I'll just like to explain the double spending thing a bit broader. So it basically means that any shipment, any cargo traveling at a given point of time can only belong to one entity, and once the ownership right is transferred to another entity, it updates the entire tracking system.
Yes, exactly, and that's exactly what it does. And another thing is, what I think of is we put IoT devices on containers, and traditionally one container, which is called a reefer, it's a cool container. It's checked on temperature, and when the temperature becomes too warm, basically the cargo in the container is rubbish. And this is for medical supplies, but also for fruits or other things, for example. And on a distributed ledger, as most people know, what happens is timestamped. So then we can exactly see where the container became too warm. Was it on the vessel? Was it on the truck? So you can actually, use this for insurance purposes or for leasing purposes, for example.
And is there any kind of procedural difference in using and applying that data for like international contracts? Is there a difference whether you supply some data in the traditional form or in distributed ledger, or does it all work the same way? So you just kind of print out the documents and that's it, and it doesn't really matter whether they used to be stored on a distributed ledger or in a traditional centralized system.
No, that's actually a very good question, because the first thing we said we're going to digitalize what's there now, because there's so many parties involved. It's not easy to automate it or to improve the process. So what we said, let's just digitalize what's there now, and that will give us the ability to automate things, and then you start really improving the process. But we don't try to do two things at the same time. So what we did as a port, we combined forces with a large bank in Holland, ABN AMRO, and we combined forces with Samsung SDS, which is the IT and the logistical provider of Samsung. And together we started a project called Deliver. And in Deliver, this is one of the things we're doing. We're connecting existing businesses together without taking their data. So the data stays in control of the data owner, but we just automate, or we just digitize the current process, and that's how we help to create a paperless trade and a frictionless trade, as you might say, and also automate it in the future.
So, I mean, of course, we're not making any kind of prognosis or something, but do you think such solutions are applicable not only to something massive and big, like let's say global trade or global shipment, but is it applicable to something smaller, like let's say, I mean, if I have like a small transportation company, like just a couple of trucks or just a couple of taxis or something, is that also applicable?
Yes, very well, because I even talked to a wood import company, and we connected to the same system. And they do a couple of containers a year, but also they want the inside, or they want to finance the container from one side to the other side of the world. So yeah, actually, as a port, we try even maybe to facilitate exactly the smaller ones, because the large companies have it arranged anyway. So for a port, that's a very important group.
Mm-hmm. So. That's one of the pillars of what we have been expecting as the mass adoption of the blockchain. But now, what about it's not the traditional, but let's say the one that has already become quite common expectation of the adoption. What about those tokens and coins? Are they anywhere in place?
Not well. Yes, in the port, but not in the Deliver project currently. But what we have in the port is, for example, a lot of congestion. So you could think of a coin we're currently experimenting with that rewards if somebody is on time, and maybe you can do something with coins on that and give them a head start if they have a lot of coins. There's thoughts on that, definitely.
Mm-hmm. And so basically, if we summarize it, it's about security, it's about shipment chain tracking, it's about the quality control, the temperature control, the condition control, and stuff like that. And it is also a little bit about those coins, but probably in a different form rather than what we used to see in a whole round of millions of ICOs took place like last couple of years.
And as this morning, the event I attended was very clear statement. I agree to that ICOs are still very popular in Asia, and ICOs is mainly to gain money, but there's a lot of fraud ICOs as well. So as a port, we don't want to, interfere with that too much, because we want to use the blockchain as a technology. And as a technology, it allows for either easy data sharing, and it allows for the benefits blockchain offers. But that's, for us, that's totally different world, from the cryptocurrencies. So we don't look into cryptocurrencies from that sense.
As the core concept of your development.
Exactly. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well,
the main things we look at is the blockchain as a technology. What we think is very interesting is there's trust in the blockchain, but how do you secure that? Things we think about is how do you, is there a blockchain technology that has the capacity of all the transactions that we want to do? Blockchain is still relatively slow in most cases. So, and how can you make just really distributed, so use a consensus model that doesn't that's not dependent on one party, like for the proof of authority, which you probably better can explain than I do. So we're looking at models to advance that.
Well, speaking about the consensus development, this is just great that you mentioned that, because I've been speaking to a whole bunch of participants of our summit, and we are all looking at, and we have all been looking at that for the last several years, that the proof of work consensus is definitely not applicable for most business solutions. But you told me about some smart energy solutions that you're developing. Now, we know that the traditional, proof of work consensus systems are actually the worst energy consumers we can imagine. So
Exactly.
how did you go about that? It's like, I mean, we don't need the technical code or stuff, but how did you go about avoiding the horrible exaggerated consumption of energy and still providing transparency and distribution of the ledger?
Yeah, what we do and what you see in most cases, but basically all cases that I know about, are privatized blockchains. So they're decentralized, but still, owned by one or a few parties. So that the model there is that party decides whether a block should, go through or not. So, but that's how you build your MVP, and you can test whether the technology works, and if you can continue with it, you can prove the case, so to say. But if you want to continue, you have to step away from that proof of authority, so from the privatized blockchain. And there we're looking on, what the best model is. And I've seen really interesting models in using algorithms to determine the consensus model. There's very interesting developments, but as I stated before, it's still a very young technology. So I think it's fine to have a privatized blockchain to start with, but you need to think how you move away from that and make it really distributed and open.
So besides the logistics experts and basically your main profile experts, you are now also accelerating. You're also now apparently, possibly, probably hiring mathematicians, IT developers, and all sorts of people to deliver that digitalization into the business process.
Yeah, and the good thing about working with ABN AMRO and Samsung and having our own block lab, that all these three parties have a lot of knowledge and developers, and so we basically have that in-house. That's a luxury position. But if we're going to grow, we'll definitely are going to look for more people, and that can be challenging. I found that most Western countries don't do mathematics anymore as they used to. So you're looking at the eastern side of Europe to find great people. I know there's also great people educated in Holland right now. So you're looking at a sort young base where you can build upon and find the best of the best. But it's a market where everybody's going to tap in. So it's going to be hard to find the right people to help us grow this blockchain and deliver.
Oh, don't you worry on that. I definitely do have a couple of really great mathematicians there.
I hope to meet
actually
event,
both
maybe,
Eastern Europe and Central Europe. So we could
I
even.
do know that Switzerland. I even might say, well, this is a little bit dangerous, but Switzerland is a little bit ahead of the game concerning blockchain. So I'm not going to steal anybody away, but I'd love to meet some of the people in Switzerland in 2 weeks' time.
Well, the reason I was asking about that is because one of the big focuses that we're trying to put in our event is that, unlike, as I said again, and I'm going to repeat that, unlike the situation of the last couple of years, the blockchain development now is opening new career opportunities, not just like possibilities to create coins or sell coins or trade coins or whatever, but it also is becoming a field for some career development, for education, for basically new system development. And I really appreciate we have you and your company and many other participants joining us, and well, kind of spreading that word to the world. Speaking about spreading the word, well, it's kind of, it will of course sound like yet another promotion of the summit, which I'm doing here right now. But what do you expect, and what would you like to see at the summit there? Well, apart from your participation there, what would you like to see from the audience and from the other participants?
Well, what we have launched, I mean, obviously, I'm proud of what we have accomplished so far and delivered. So I want to at least get back from people there if they also think it's a good idea. In the last 2 weeks, we had about 40 parties, a little over 40 parties that contacted us in order to work with us. But I'm especially interested in the Swiss companies, if they see the same thing. And we built interoperability between two blockchains and how they, advise us to go through with it. So there's a bit of technical exploration, and also for us, it would be, nice to do a showcase and to see if parties in Switzerland want to continue with us, because we have parties in Holland, and we like to extend that over the border, because logistics, as we all can understand, doesn't end in Holland. Usually they go over the border. And I think Switzerland is a great, they have great industries. I think it's a great, beautiful country anyway, with the mountains. So no, that's the things I want to get out of the event there.
Well, yeah, in the Netherlands, you don't really happen to have mountains. Those are the Netherlands, and there are mountains, yeah.
That's why they're called the Netherlands.
Yeah. Well, that is great. As I said, I'm extremely glad you're taking part in the event. I'm really looking forward to your participation. For our audiences, it is basically that we will have Chris speaking on behalf of the Port of Rotterdam, and several more experts representing the industrial corporations and basically industrial giants of the world, presenting their pilots on how to develop new systems on the blockchain. So stay tuned, and yes, do visit us November 23rd, 24th in Basel. Yeah. Thank you, Chris. It was a real pleasure, and looking forward to meeting you there.
Yeah, it's well, it's live. You sort of want to say the right things, but it's. I hope you're happy with it.
We of course we say the right thing. Okay. So, thanks everyone. Stay tuned. We will have more lives. We will have more live interviews the next week, and we will introduce all the participants of the summit before the summit, so that you know what to expect from us. Take care.